Welcome to Concerned Citizens Forum. My name is Bob Del Rosso. I'm joined by Beverly Hart, co-host. This morning's panel consists of David Bowden, David Saad, and special guest Dr. Christopher Young.
Jones.
Jones. I'm sorry, I said
That's
Young.
fine. I'm young, maybe.
Young
that's,
Jones.
Young
Christopher Jones.
Yeah,
Interim principal of our high school.
correct.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And
Thanks
I
for having me.
apologize for calling you Young instead of Jones.
That's fine. I won't take it to heart.
One of my dearest friends had a son named Christopher Jones.
Oh, well,
Dr. Jones, a lot's going on these days at the high school.
we do. We have a lot going on. And first, I mean, thanks for letting me come on this show again. And I'm surprised you let me come on after the first time, but you know, I'll take the chance. There's a lot going on at the high school, and as I was saying earlier, that it's chances like these that are really meaningful because people normally don't realize all the things that are going on at the high school. They get very narrow reports concerning tests and assessments and things like that, but often a lot of your real, authentic, genuine learning isn't measured by those tests. So it's important that you hear some of the different things going on. I know we had spoken before that you had wanted me to give you a follow-up on the partnership that we had going with the Joyner Institute out of UMass Boston. That's taken another step forward. We are now one of 4 schools that the Joyner Institute is partnered with in an effort to hold workshops, and they're going to provide people to come down and work with our teachers as far as creating creative curriculum and looking at teaching and understanding a different way. And so that started with a couple visits. We had a visit from a Manu Imami, who is an artist, and she does a lot with prosthetics, and she talks about the social consequences of war. She came down, met with the students. It was a fantastic success. We had about 8 to 10 students there, and we had probably 8 or 9 faculty members there from all different departments. We had art, obviously, because she's an artist. We had English teachers, and we had some history teachers there, because we wanted to see where something like this would go, because we often find that learning is organic. It is planned to an extent, but when you get students engaged and it becomes organic, that's where you really see all the offshoots and places that you can go with it. And boy, have they gone far. We are now, those 8 students are creating an installation piece to be displayed at the Attleboro Museum of Art, and that's going to happen in May sometime. Based on what they took away from Manu's presentation. And so while they're working on that, which I mentioned to you earlier, I don't know if you want me to mention or just move on with the other stuff. They're also, next week, we are all going up. We've been invited to UMass Boston. The Joyner Institute is doing an opening of Manu's latest gallery, and she's going to meet us there early and walk us through the gallery, and then the students have been invited to be part of, as not participants, but in the audience, a small audience, of a panel discussion based on women's rights, women equality, by 3 esteemed guests, Manu being one of them. Mm-hmm. And then they're actually going to recognize Seekonk High School at this event as being a partner with the Joyner Institute. So that's pretty big that the students have taken it that far.
Yeah. And you've got to get that information out. I know you do things with your own channel, Channel 17, and I'm hoping that people start watching that and realize that there is this going on, because you can do that on kind of a daily basis, almost. I mean, it goes on weekly,
right.
and you can do a different one every week and keep people informed as things develop, not just come on once in a while with a public, whatever we are, because we're concerned citizens, and to find out and let people know. But you can do even more, and I'm glad to see that you're doing it, because I want to see Channel 17 be an active member of the community, not just of the schools.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah.
There is, the problem with coming on once in a great while is there's so much going on. It's tough to keep on top of. I mean, we've got curriculum work going on. One of the most recent student achievements is there was an essay contest, and she entered in the essay contest because Jane Goodall is giving a talk. Now, I don't know how many people remember Jane Goodall or who she is. Huge name in science.
Yeah.
And so our student entered this essay contest, won the essay contest, and so she's having dinner with Jane Goodall. I mean, what kind of opportunity is that? And if you want to talk about learning, I mean, you know, these life things that the students in art are taking away, that this student is taking away, and then just the different things we're doing with curriculum where we're trying to, obviously we want it more student-centered, and we're trying to shorten curriculum in certain places. We're working with the middle school. Our teachers, and it's almost a groundswell, our teachers are getting together, our department chairs and curriculum leaders, and looking at their curriculum and saying, okay, well, you've taught this in the middle school, can you maybe beef it up a little bit, and then we can take that out of the high school curriculum and go even deeper, and increase students' understanding at a higher level, and get into that creativity piece, because now we've saved time. I mean, if you can save 4 weeks in a class, you've saved a massive amount of time that you can do so much with, just by moving a unit here or moving a unit there. Our math departments, for example, we're moving a higher level math down into the middle school, and then the middle school, that means they're going to be moving a higher level math down another grade into 7th grade, so that we open up more opportunities at the higher grades at the high school for students to take these more challenging courses.
I'm smiling because I'm looking at the expression on David Bowden's face. I think David started that when he was in high school.
I think I like to think I was. Yeah. Anybody that takes Algebra 1 and Geometry 1 the first year, and Algebra 2 and Geometry 2 the second year, and Calculus and all the rest of the stuff in a 3-year period of time, they say, you can't do that. Well, sorry, but I did.
Dr. Jones, seated at your right, is a former art teacher at Seekonk High School. I'm sure he has some observations.
Yeah, I have some questions. You mentioned curriculum. Who really is in charge of curriculum? Like, I remember as a department head, I developed the art curriculum that started from the junior high. I was in charge from the junior high up to the high school. So who's in charge of that? Are you tasked with that, or are your department heads?
Well, typically we have a district curriculum coordinator or district curriculum leader.
Okay.
And so that individual is in charge of the K-12 curriculum. And so he right now it's Richard Lind, Mr. Richard Lind. He's in charge of professional development, and he's in charge of getting the curriculum aligned and making sure that we have a K-12 solid curriculum.
Now, when you say he's in charge of everything from math to art?
Correct.
Okay.
And so now, obviously, no one person knows all of those things, or knows them to the extent to be most effective and have it implemented and created and implemented as effective as possible. So he works with us, the principals, and then the principals work with the department chairs. So when you talk about the exact writing of curriculum, how I view my job and what it turns out to be is I create opportunities. So I create opportunities in a structure for department chairs to get key people in their department together to work on curriculum. So whether that comes out to coordinating times with Dr. Whalen at the middle school, whether that comes to setting up a space for them, giving them whatever they need as far as support. Because realistically, I'm a history guy. That's what my background is in. Realistically, science. Sure, I can talk about the science curriculum, but we have a fantastic science department chair who's on top of just the brand new science standards that just came out. And so now she's working in concert with the curriculum coordinator at the middle school, and they're looking at how they're starting to change their curriculum over to a more inquiry-based, problem-solving type of curriculum. So it filters down. One person makes sure everything's occurring, and then it filters down. But we'd mentioned Ed Reform in '93 earlier when we were talking before the show. That really put local control or a lot of control in the hands of the principals. So if I'm working together with Dr. Whalen and we're on the same page as far as what we want to do from 6 to 12, we make a lot of opportunities for those teachers.
Good, because back when I was there, we would take I worked with an English teacher and myself, and we took like a writing of a book and the illustration of it, which to fuse it to make it like a graphic novel, and we would do things. We used to have the year-end movie for seniors every year that was written by somebody in the English department, by students, and then the students did it in the art club. They filmed it throughout the whole year. It was a year-long project. And then we would show the film at seniors night, senior class night before graduation, so all the parents got to see it. It was fun. I found that in the area of mathematics, and please, this is going to challenge all of you here thinking, but I've always thought that we're wasting our time teaching our kids chemistry, these real high-level math courses at that point in time in their development, that they could get as much from an abstract thought like a person going to a store that has to buy X reams of cloth or X bushels of apples or what have you, and then come up with using basic math skills, but an abstract thought is how do I arrive at the number, the answer to this particular question. I thought that would be more advantageous to students than saying, okay, take chemistry, because where are you going to apply chemistry unless you're going to go into, I think that was best left for college level, where it was try to get the kids to understand basic math and how to apply it to everyday living that you're going to go through. I don't know. I mean,
So I'm not sure.
my point is, I think that our students in our curriculum and schools would best be served to take a real, critical look at some of these classes that are like chemistry and trigonometry that we're teaching kids or offering to kids, and maybe we'd be best suited bringing back home economics and wood shop and things that are going to help them survive, because no matter whether you go to Harvard or you go to a trade school, we all have to survive. How do we survive? And maybe that kid never gets to that trade school or to Harvard later on, but he or she's got to survive in the real world because life often slaps them right in the face. Are we preparing them for that slap in the face so that they can survive? So my point is, I think our high schools have got to take a critical look at what they're offering kids.
I think.
Was I clear? Am I clear?
You're
Yeah,
clear.
Okay.
You're clear. I think there's about 3 different things there.
Yeah.
It's always important to take a critical look at what we're teaching and how useful it is, especially the way the world is going these days and the way education is going these days. And I think what you're talking about, when you're talking about chemistry, there's a lot that goes into chemistry, and some of the ways we have a couple teachers teaching at the high school is one of the teachers does chemistry through baking and
Okay.
cooking. So the students are cooking, and they explain the chemistry lesson with it. All the way up to, we have an AP chemistry class that does exceptionally well. I think where you find, because we have those different levels of chemistry in our school, you find that the different levels of students gravitate towards those different levels. So a student that's taking AP chemistry isn't necessarily, unless something changes, because people reinvent themselves their whole life, unless something changes, they're going to college. And so they're taking that AP chemistry, and that's going to serve them very well in college, whether they go to a BCC or whether they go right to a 4-year college. As far as, and that's just one of the things, the other thing as far as your home ec, your wood shop, your voc type of things, that's an issue in high schools. High schools lost that. We used to have comprehensive high schools that we were looking at. And those high schools, being comprehensive, would have wood shop, they'd have machine shop, they'd have home ec. That all moved away from the high schools to your voc schools. And voc schools get certain monies, they're governed under certain statutes. Ideally, looking at it critically, and this is one of the things that doesn't get out about Seekonk High School that we're doing, we're looking at programs like that. We're looking at ways to increase our internship opportunities for students, so that as students move into senior year, they may be able to go out and take an internship instead of sitting in classes all day, because that, for that student, is more meaningful. It comes down to individualism and individualized education for students, getting to students what they need most. You can create certain areas that most students go into different silos, for lack of a better term, but when you're looking at resources that are available to address every single student, sometimes we come up short and we come up lacking. So it falls upon us to be creative in what we do to meet those students' needs, to best prepare them for when they leave.
Do you realize that we used to have the senior day when they could go off and do internships? We had a couple that went up to the Boston Aquarium and got jobs up there afterwards. They found out that this is what they really liked. They understood it. They took all the courses they needed to take, went to college, but went there. And we did it in whether they went into nursing or whatever. We used to do that, and then they cut that whole program out. And I know that some of our groups used to get them together, give them awards, and listen to them, and they would tell us everything they had done. We'd have a breakfast for them, and it was amazing what their experience had been. And then that was cut out. Now, that's before you were there.
Right.
So I'm just suggesting that maybe that's something that it come back. They would have one day a week where they could be away, the seniors, away from their desks and go and do something, and it was like an internship.
You know, Beverly, we've talked, and Bob is, and you, both of you have pushed the whole concept of civics, okay? And I remember you had a great program where the kids went up to the
They went to town hall.
town hall, okay.
And they went to all the places.
Now, you know what I would do? What I would love to see the school do is don't do it for a day. Do it for like 2 weeks at a minimum, where that kid doesn't even go to school, shows up in either the town clerk's office, this office, and then they can either rotate or switch and learn it for a couple of weeks, what their government is doing, you know, and how it affects their lives. And maybe they want to be part of it at some point in time.
We had a student
Go out
go
on
in with the conservation, and in the summer, went and worked with the conservation agent and did a whole study on it.
Yeah.
Brought it back to school, got credit for it.
You know?
Right.
And that was just all volunteers doing that. But we've been shut out.
Yeah, when DPW was going to resurface a road, there's a kid there. Now that person explains to him why that road has to be done in such a way so that we're not repatching it every single year.
Right, and the
you know,
drainage
these are
and all
fundamental
things.
things that I think kids are missing. And no fault of yours. You know, this is my fault because
I'm
I'm
not
the
saying
older
it is.
person here that was an educator, and I saw this happening, and you know, I ended up leaving education. I saw it happen. I said, this is not the way to go, and you know, unfortunately, the trade-off, as you said, you know, is because of funding, and you give away what you feel as though, not you, but the school department feels as though is the lesser of two evils, and they give away home ec, or they give away metal shop, or what have you. But, you know, I still think there's a role for that in our schools.
I
I call
definitely
it
think-
survival, but.
Well, I definitely think there's a role for that, and we are doing a couple of things that were mentioned. We're in the middle of writing a civics course, so that next year, next October, November, whenever the school committee deems it fit to present to them for our program of studies for the following year, we're looking at putting in a half-year civics course. So students will
Fantastic.
enroll in a
Yes.
civics course, and it's based on a few things, but one of the main components of that civics course is a service component. And so we're interested in doing service, community service, things like that. So students will not only be learning about government, they'll be learning about the core part of government that often we tend to forget. It's about service. It's not about a job. It's not about a job for your friends. It's about service.
Right.
So you're there to serve the populace. So that's why that's going to be part of that. The other piece of that is when you talk about going to a job for 2 weeks, that becomes something larger. That becomes more of an internship type of thing. And like I said, we support that. Logistically, we run into some trouble with some scheduling, so we have to look at how the high school schedule runs, because then we might be able to do something where they don't miss as many academics, or the onus doesn't become on them so much. Now, the reality check, or the slap in the face you mentioned, that is definitely true for anybody that gets out of high school that's been in high school the whole time. So what we're doing for things like that is we just had the Credit for Life Fair over at the high school. We have a bunch of local businesses come in. They set up around the gym, and we take all our juniors and we put them in the gym. And they get a sheet that they have to go through, a worksheet. Each station is set up as a different part of life. So you get a job, and you're assigned a job, and you get that much money. And basically what it becomes is building a monthly budget and living on a monthly budget. So now you have to go get a car. So you have a choice of cars. You have to go pay insurance on that car. You have to go to the bank. You have to look at if you get a credit card. You go all around all these booths. You have to get clothes for what you do. You're a professional or you're blue collar or whatever. You have to go buy a certain type of clothes, and they give you a clothing allowance. Then you go back to the credit counseling booth at the very end, and they tally up what you look like. Now, you are either a train wreck, or you've done a good job, or you're successful.
Right.
And what they do is to lend the importance to school is you're assigned a credit rating, even to discuss the idea of a credit rating and how reliable are you, and it's tied to the student's attendance. So if you show up on time all the time, you have a high credit rating. If you don't, because credit's about trustworthiness and responsibility, you have a low credit rating. And it was interesting to see some students have to go to public transportation because nobody would lend them money for a car. Juniors, a lot of times, leave that and they are anywhere from shocked to, well, that's not too bad. I seem to be on top of things because I understand it, to some people we had that were very shaken up and were very bothered for the next month because of this experience they had, that this is real life when you get out. So any chance we get to infuse the idea of real life, so to speak, I don't even like breaking it up like that, but it's true. The high school offers a nice walled, protected area for students. Once you get into real life, it's a whole different thing, which we're trying to address. We're trying to address the idea of learning being a 24/7 thing instead of you learn math when you're in math class, you learn history when you're in history class. The whole interdisciplinary type of thing that you mentioned with English and art going on, and we're now, it looks a little different than when I was in high school because now we try to do that through technology. And
Right.
a lot of the technological changes we're making are based on the idea that you learn outside of school. You don't just learn things inside of school because, quite honestly, a student learns best when that teacher takes that content and connects it to where the student is and what has influenced the student's thinking to that point. And what influences the student's thinking to that point is what they experience outside of school. So there's got to be that necessary connection. And we're trying to think creatively and get to different pieces of that by making the changes we can make to get the whole picture as we go along.
Yes.
And you're trying to do all this in the requirements of what?
Oh, don't forget the requirements. But
Which kind of binds you to start with. That's the biggest
Right.
problem. That if you're doing it to test, and that's what you're teaching for.
right.
Chris, your statement
right.
of learning outside of school, I think that was very profound because you educators today have been forced to pick up what happened with the breakdown of the family.
Correct.
We used to learn those things that you just spoke about at home. Our parents taught, you know, we had extended families. We had our grandparents in many cases. I learned more from my grandfathers than I did in school on certain subjects. And I think that was the case. I think our problem in these United States today is a breakdown of the family who are teaching values, and you're being expected, you're being forced, let me change that word, you're being forced to make up that difference. And the country as a whole is hurting because of it.
We, being a teacher today, or anybody tied to schools, is vastly different than it was 20 years ago. And teachers tell us this. As an administrator, teachers tell me this, and I tell teachers this. You know, when teachers say, why am I dealing with this? I teach English. But they know, and this is one of the great things about the teachers in Seekonk, because I really see this a lot. It's different teaching now than maybe when they got into teaching, but they've taken that mantle on. And they realize that a student that comes in, maybe they're not even available to learn about quadratic equations that day. And maybe quadratic equations aren't even important to them in the bigger picture. So the teachers quite often, even though there's the testing and the assessment and the standards, the teachers quite often take a step back and continue to build that relationship with those students and use teachable moments that they can to help that student just be in school that day. Because realistically, and quite honestly, sometimes school is the place where the students feel best. So the teachers build those relationships in those classrooms so they understand when it is time to push and say, no, look, you know, pull your boots up. You need to get through this and you need to work hard because you can. And times when they say, okay, look, you're not even available to learn this today. So I could go through the motions and you could get frustrated and make things worse. Or, you know, we could take a step back and maybe discuss something a little different. And that's incredibly important. So,
And that's why we need to have it based on the educators' experiences, knowledge, what they can do with their relationships, not a government coming in and telling you what you should be doing every day or how long you should be doing it.
right, you're mentioning about local control. I mean, that's really important. And, you know, and there's a couple things. There's a couple things I believe, but one, you know, about education. But a phrase that really gets to me, and it's been attributed to Zig Ziglar and Thoreau. I don't want to misquote anybody, but it has to do with what I've achieved by reaching my goal is far outweighed by what I've become by reaching my goal. And it speaks to the idea of the journey. And education isn't supposed to be neat. People like to think it's neat, and they like to quantify it. And that's what we're running into with these assessments and testing and things like that, is that they're trying to quantify education. They're saying, set a goal, and that's where you're going to go. What they're missing is all the learning and growing taking place on the way to that goal. So in the end, even if you fall a little short of that goal, if you set the goal like you're supposed to and high enough, because, I mean, look, you don't set the goal at the floor and say we've made it. You set the goal up high, and then even if you fall a little short and you turn around and look where you've come, you're so much more, like you said, prepared to move forward in life and be successful than if you just do these meaningless things of checking off these boxes. And I think that's where we're missing things about education, and that's what we're trying to get back to in Seekonk.
Good, get the children motivated and involved.
Right.
And you're allowing them to even go off on their own.
Correct.
Because if they have that impetus, I can do this, and they succeed,
Right.
what's the next step?
I mean, intrinsic motivation is a phenomenal thing. And, you know, no matter how much you want to motivate somebody to do something, we call it engagement in the classrooms, it's not as good as intrinsic motivation. When you see a student, like that art project, when you see students buy into something because they want to do it, they fly and they go higher than you could even ever imagine. And that's what we're really trying to move towards. And we're really trying to move towards that in the whole district and at the high school.
I just hope you're allowed to do that and continue and not have anything imposed on you from exteriors.
Well, we will.
That well-meaning, but they don't have any clue.
We will continue to do our best. We're doing a film series district-wide,
Yes.
and we have that film coming up next Wednesday night. It's called